All right, welcome in. Very happy Wednesday now. The calm before the madness, as they say, as we get ready for March Madness here on a college basketball tip-off show. You got a couple playing games here tonight. We will break those both down. We'll talk about some of the things that we are looking forward to coming up over the next couple of days. Obviously, round one, Thursday and Friday, should be extremely interesting here. And we've got two of the best at WagerTalk. Going to talk about it here today with the pen. Ralph Michaels in the house, as is Adam Trigger, ready to roll. And both guys, by the way, locked and loaded with their 5% best bets up at their pages at wagertalk.com. In fact, Triggs is still just $2 right now if you visit him, but Ralph's got a 5% best bet locked loaded also on his page at wagertalk.com. As we head to game one here, Ralph, I'll bring it to you. Popular game here tonight between Grambling and Montana State. Two teams most of the viewing audience probably has not had a big chance to see here this year, but we did see Grambling handle our producers, Texas Southern, a little bit here. So what do we do in this game coming up tonight for playing game number one?
Well, let me full disclosure. This is an actual client release today, and I am on Grambling plus the points. Now, Montana State, the flavor of the day, but let's look back at their season. This team was 13-17 going into their regular season finale. Basically, not even going to be an NIT team under 500. What happens? They get red hot from three. They beat Weber State. They go into the conference tournaments. They beat Weber State again. They beat Sacramento State as a small favor. Then they pull the upset against Montana. Now, the one thing to note is that when a team gets red hot shooting threes, and Montana State is a very good three-point shooting team, number 42 in the country, number one in the Big Sky. But again, it wasn't enough to help them because their defense is so horrendous. So what happened? They were at home against Weber State. They're 13-17. They shoot 48% from three, a crazy number. What happens when they play Weber State again in the first day of the Big Sky tournament? They shoot 48% again from three. Then they shoot 41% against Sacramento State, and then have a red hot second half against Montana to win it. When I looked at March Madness teams that have a win percentage under 59% and are now a favorite, that trend is under 33% against the spread. Those teams are not accustomed to winning. They're not accustomed to being the better team and taking care of business. When I look at Montana State, they're only 3-8 ATS as a favorite this year, 0-2 as a favorite away from home. And this Grambling team is one of the slowest paced teams with an excellent defense. While they went 0-4 against the spread as a favorite of 6 or higher, as a small favorite or a dog, how's this for impressive? 17-4 against the spread and 13-2 against the spread since January 13th. This Grambling team was a very good team last season. They were 24-9, and they went to the finals, conference tournament finals, played Texas Southern and lost. They got their revenge this time. And while you look at their record and go, well, they're only 20-14, you have to remember that they started the season 0-10 against Division I teams. They played the fourth toughest non-conference schedule in the country. Why? Well, they're SWAC teams. They need the cash. You play all those money games on the road early in the season. You got to fill your coffers. Hopefully you learn from that experience and that very difficult competition, and you get better. That's exactly what happened for the Tigers today. Now Montana State having to travel across the country, a new venue. I don't expect that three-point shooting to do what they did. Again, a team that when you have two neutral-setted teams like this, the slower-paced team with the better defense, I'm going to give the edge to them. That's exactly what Grambling State is here. First NCAA appearance ever for the Tigers. Congratulations, Dante Jackson. And I'm going to give them their first win. I'll call for the outright upset tonight for Grambling State.
Ooh, all right, starting it off with a dog right off the bat there, Ralph. Well done. Trig, Montana State was not on the list of places you plan to visit this year, I noticed. I'm not even sure if we have any friggin' idea where it is here, but I'm pretty sure you know where Boise State and Colorado is, which is our other game of the night here for a play-in. Mountain West taking on Pac-12. What are you looking at in this big matchup here tonight?
Well, first of all, Joe, Montana State's in Bozeman. I heard it's
Mm.
phenomenal there, like a beautiful part of the country. Can't wait to get there. No, I did not get out there this year. I will at some point. Um, but yeah, another two places I'd love to get are Boulder and Boise, also on the list. But I did, I guess I'll look at this from an anti Boise standpoint. It's kind of the way I lean here, Joe. I think we're going to have a Centennial State sweep, if you will. Both Colorado teams advancing to the to the main bracket. I just don't think this is a great matchup for Boise State. It's not so much that I'm looking to play on Colorado per se, but Boise State was a team that I felt kind of was the one that maybe benefited the most from the Mountain West collectively being good this year. And the other thing is, I think they benefit from the way they match up with other Mountain West teams. So, the Mountain West is still it's getting treated like a power conference more and more. It's still not a power conference. So one thing Boise really benefits from in conference is their size. And, they're at any given time, I mean, Boise's only really got 6 guys on the floor at this point anyway. At any given time, they're all 6'5" or bigger. Which is something that plays in that conference because not every team has elite size like that in the Mountain West. At any given time, Colorado is going to have 6'8", 6'8", 6'9", 6'11". The team is massive. They've got collectively as much size as any team in the country, and I think it's going to make it a little tougher for Boise State to really exploit some of what they exploited in Mountain West play. Now, the reason I say that is you go back to non-conference when this Boise State team was playing power conference opposition, quote, put it in quotes, like Power 5 opposition. They lost to Clemson. They lost to Virginia Tech. They lost to Butler. They lost to Washington State. It wasn't until Mountain West play when Boise sort of played their way into being kind of I guess, that 5th or 6th Mountain West team. Because if you remember, that's one of the things I said on Monday's show, that I really felt like the Mountain West figured out how to play the game. They went out, they scheduled good in the non-conference, they won those games, and they had teams like Colorado State, Utah State, Nevada coming into the conference play 14-0, 13-1. And so a team like Boise benefited from playing all those teams and beating some of those teams. Boise's 0-9 all time in the NCAA tournament. So, either they're due or they struggle in this type of setting. But that certainly, I guess, doesn't bode well for them. The other thing I want to point out here that I kind of just, felt like I saw watching the selection shows and stuff this weekend is they looked really surprised to learn that they were going to play a game on Wednesday night. When they panned to them and they announced their name, it certainly had the vibe of a team that felt like they were easily into the field and now are getting thrown into a Wednesday game. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. But to me, when I look at Colorado, look at, their ability to score in transition, I like how that matches up with Boise. And I think that Colorado's size takes away from the one thing that made Boise State sort of a team that could hang with the upper echelon teams in the Mountain West. I like the Buffs. I think we have Colorado joining their in-state counterpart, Colorado State, in the field, and they probably do it by more than 3. So not a client play for me. But I do think Colorado is probably the right side here.
All right, Colorado getting it done here tonight. Ralph, what are you thinking of that big Mountain West and Pac-12 matchup here? Are you leaning one way towards the side or towards the total?
Well, you got to remember that before Tuesday night, the only team in the last 8 years from the Mountain West that had an NCAA tournament game was San Diego State. The conference was over, and now all of a sudden, you get 6 teams to win it. Well, the only reason 6 teams are in it for the Mountain West, the State lost so many of those games. So the funny thing is, while they may not have anyone past the second or third round, they get many more teams into the tourney because the regression of the Aztecs. But Adam, while you were talking about the game, how about this? I will quantify. Adam said average height for Boise, looking at KenPom, number 29 in the country. Average height from KenPom for Colorado, for 11. So Adam said it perfectly, where not many teams match up more height than Colorado. But I just pulled this out as you were talking about Boise State as a big favorite or a big dog when they're the bully or when someone has a target on them. They're a perfect 11-0, playing 6 or more or getting 6 or more. Between the lines of 5.5 in what you want to have those competitive games, boy, went 18 against the spread. Type of games coming down to the person that you want. Now, you look at.
Oh, hold on, Ralph. We keep losing you on the audio there. Go ahead and just refresh that, and we'll get back to you there as soon as he gets back on Boise State and Colorado. Trig, I know you aren't a big bracket guy, although I'm sure you'll dabble here or there when it comes into it, though. But a lot of people watching and listening certainly filling out those brackets last minute to try to get it in. Is there any approach or any advice you have for folks that are trying to put these crazy things together, where you look for the dogs, where you don't, or you just start from the middle, work your way back? How are you to approach it, if at all?
So the way I would approach it, again, yes, I've come on here and I'm like the get off my lawn guy, right, Joe? I'm like, yeah, I don't fill out brackets. Like, even though like everyone enjoys doing it, I'm like, I'm not trying to rain on everyone's parade by that. It's just, it's something that I felt like has hindered my ability to like focus on the matchups in the past. So like 10 years ago, I mean, this is going on like a decade where I just haven't really done it. But if I was going to do it, Joe, or when I give advice to other people on doing it, I kind of like to I'll look at like what my futures portfolio looks like. Cause really I'm doing it. I'm just doing it in a different way. Like rather than fill out a bracket, I'm just sort of building over the course of the season, a portfolio of futures. I'm still doing the same thing, trying to figure out who I think is going to get to the end and win this thing. And so I kind of will just play those out, right? Like, so this year, a team I took a pretty big position on was Tennessee. I talked about it a couple of times on this show, or WagerTalk programming at different prices. And I even said a couple weeks ago, Joe, that I was starting to sour a little bit on the Vols. I wasn't as sort of gung-ho on my position on them as I was maybe back in like, January when I added more and so on and so forth, or before the season when I played them. But I'm kind of back in on Tennessee because I like their draw. So that's a team where I'm more likely to now sort of like take them because I think their draw is somewhat favorable. Seems like sort of it seems like a Purdue Tennessee Elite Eight matchup to me. Like I get that like anything can happen, but if you go back in previous years, like the bracket, the selection committee has put them in the same region a couple times, almost as if to try to manifest that matchup. I'm going off memory here, but I'm certain that Purdue and Tennessee were like set up to play each other one year, and then maybe it was last year and Purdue obviously got beat. I think they're on a collision course, and I think Tennessee would be the better team there, so I would advance them. I've talked extensively about how good I think UConn is. I'm not going to put off anyone from taking them to the Final Four. I do see merit in like Auburn and Illinois, I guess, out of that bracket. I see them getting some love. I could see, maybe UConn having to play those two teams in the same weekend, which I think would be the case if it was Sweet 16 Elite Eight, if all the top seeds advance. That could be a little bit difficult for UConn. Maybe I still think UConn's just the absolute class there. And I'll go back to when I played before the season, Joe. I still like Marquette. I bet them before the season at 25-1 to win the NCAA tournament. I didn't get, it's like the odds are still roughly the same, but I kind of don't hate their draw either as an option. So again, there's a million different ways you can go with this thing. None of them are the right way. Like I see people criticizing other people's brackets on Twitter, Joe. Last year, Miami and Florida Atlantic were in the Final Four. Like,
Yeah.
with UConn and San Diego State. So I don't want to see anyone giving anyone else a hard time about their bracket when this is the shit that happens on a yearly basis in this tournament. I just like to kind of target the teams that I feel most strongly about. And like I said, last year my bracket would have looked horrible, but my 25, 30 to 1 UConn ticket cashed. So kind of the way I go for it.
No, that's a great point here, Trig. I mean, compared to what you've got going on here on what you're betting in the futures market, kind of build around that. And if you win across the board there. And Ralph, I know you've got a pretty interesting guide up and available over at WagerTalk here for folks that tackle a lot of this kind of information here. Wrap us up there on Boise State and Colorado. I know you had found an interesting stat in that playing game here tonight, and tell us about the guide as well.
Well, guys, as Adam was talking about Colorado and Boise, I went to the database, and when I looked at Boise as a big dog or a big favorite, so as a favorite of -6 or higher, or a dog of +6 or more, they're actually a perfect 11-0 this season. When they're facing an opponent with the line between 5.5 +5.5 to -5.5, 6-13 against. So when you have this type of game, you certainly want the best player. That is for and KJ, is an elite athlete, by far their best player on the court. And you agree. And Joe,
Ralph, we're hearing every other word there, Ralph, with the microphone. Technology is wonderful when it works here. But Trig, we do have a few other questions to try to get Ralph all fixed up over there.
Fire them away. If anyone's got, I'll take anything. Any game you guys got questions, I'll let you know what I like or don't like. Tonight's slate is games. Not great.
We have got obviously some questions when it comes to the futures market here. And you mentioned, I believe, was it yesterday or the day before, you talked about some of the teams and some of the tickets that you're holding. Do you get back involved in the futures market after, let's say, Thursday, Friday's game? Is it an ongoing process for you right up until the end, or what you have is what you have?
The last few years, I'll get involved now. So like, I mean, I don't think I've fired any mid-tournament like futures other than, well, like 2 years ago I definitely added more on Kansas. Like before, I kind of bet Kansas the whole way. So 2 years ago, like I felt like, but that's what I would do maybe if I like if I wanted to just go all in on UConn. I think that's how I would probably do it. Like wait until they get. Wait, like, because I don't know that you're going to get much worse. Like, wait till they get down to like the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. Then, if you still really like UConn and they're still really in it, then maybe like come out firing on them to win the whole thing when they only need to win like 2 or 3 more games and just get closer to like even money or plus 120 as opposed to like right now. What did I see them at, Joe? Plus 375. Like it's just it's just probably not worth it right now to like jump in with them. So that's probably the only case I would do it. Like I said, I did add a little bit more to Tennessee. I like that one. I wish I listened to CT and went and put a lot more on UConn when they were like 10 or 11 to 1. I have like a small play on that. I think Kelly has that too. Like that was really smart of them to do that back then because obviously they've got a great like position there now just from where that line is. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, you can go back to Monday's show where I listed them all off. I'm not like in love with like, I got St. Mary's still roughly the same price. Not really in love with that. I suppose Michigan State, I'm fortunate just to even have a chance to play that one out because, that turned out to be a bad bet. I think I have 50 to 1. So yeah, this is probably like the least sort of, I'm not in love with what I've got for futures right now, but we'll see. Maybe one will hit. And if not, well, hopefully we win along the way.
It's good. That's good advice here, guys. Always keep your eyes and your ears open there. Opportunities will present themselves here over the next couple of days. All right, Ralph, let's see if we can get that microphone one more time for you here. Let's hear what you got to say here. Forget about the Boise State, Colorado. Every time you do that, we never get to it anyway. So talk about the guide and tell folks what they can get over at WagerTalk.com.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How's that, Joe?
Much better. Much better.
Okay. Thank you. My apologies on that, guys. Not quite sure why, but I do want to mention the guy just got posted on my homepage at WagerTalk, wt.buzz/RM. Yes, it's free. If you watched the Bet On It show yesterday, we talked about some of the situations. There are 17 ATS and over-under situations, plus the teams they apply to. There's the 3 charts that were on Bet On It yesterday, plus another chart coming from WagerTalk today. That is all free and available on my page. I do have a 5% which goes on Thursday. And I wanted to mention that I had a special on Bet On It. I'll share it here. The code MMRALPH will get you 30 days of all sports. My NBA, 71% run. NHL, 75% run. March, number 1, 2 of the last 3 years. You get the 30 days, all sports, under $6 a day, just $179. The code MMRALPH to get that special.
All right, good stuff there, Ralph. Trig, I did see, and two teams and 2 conferences you know a little something about here coming up with BYU and Duquesne, because the money is rolling in on BYU. So, here we go again. Big 12, well, new addition to the Big 12, right? Taking on the Atlantic 10 here. Duquesne, nobody thought would be here, but you've seen them both, these teams. You know the conferences well here. How big a mismatch is this? Because the market continues to bet BYU.
Yeah, I got to disagree with that a little bit. So, this got bet up. The way I would play it at this point, Joe, would be to play back against that. I'm not sure if Duquesne will make my client card, but there's matchup sort of edges to be had for Duquesne in that game. I think, their perimeter defense was awesome. Like, they ended up being one of the most efficient defensive teams in the Atlantic 10 this year. Their big problem, if you go back, like somewhere out there, we previewed the Atlantic 10 conference before the season. And I think I said I like Duquesne to win that league. Ended up very much being wrong about that. But a big reason that was the case is their shot selection was so poor. Like during the season, you've got guys like Day Grant, Jimmy Clark, like who should be, that team should have been one of the better teams in that league, but they really just offensively were disjointed at times. And it came down to guys taking bad shots, forcing shots, getting behind, and suddenly it's just contested jumper. It was just a tough from that regard. But one thing they always did extremely well was defend. And we saw them kind of, able to lean on that in the Atlantic 10 tournament and ride it all the way to, winning the A10 tournament. So where I think BYU might struggle with that a little bit is they get shot happy at times, right? Like BYU is kind of a, like a free flowing offense and they will, take the 3 and they're happy to, take jumpers. So if Duquesne can kind of force them into being a 3-point shooting team, I just think it opens up the potential for variance there. Now, if BYU scoring, like we've kind of seen BYU run teams out this year, it's certainly possible. But where that number is now, Joe, I have a pretty strong lean toward +9.5 with Duquesne. I wouldn't be surprised if they can just make it ugly enough to hang around.
Yeah, well, the money, I couldn't believe how big a movement that was early on here over the last couple of days. Go ahead, Ralph. I see the pen's up.
One thing, though, be careful. Make sure you're checking the injury list. The last couple games, now Duquesne still won them, but they are missing 3 players that have started a combined, trying to add up, 44 games this year. So when you have when you're lacking that type of depth and you're missing those players, if they sneak by the first game, that's clearly a situation you might want to fade them in the second game. So do keep an eye on the Duke's injury report.
And Ralph, how do you approach, because nobody does trends like you do here, and we're hearing, and I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening now, they get inundated with all the trends, right? Overs, unders, early games, East Coast teams versus West Coast teams. I mean, you go down the list here. Is there a trend or two here that you look at when approaching how to go ahead and handicap these first couple of days here?
Well, one thing, Teddy asked me this on a show today, and I think the question everyone asks is rest versus rust. What's better,
Hmm.
those teams that played the conference tournaments early or the teams that just finished the conference tournaments? Well, bringing up like Illinois, for example, Underwood, after he won the Big Ten tournament, said, "Oh my God, I am so happy I'm not playing any more Big Ten teams." And that was against a pretty easy draw. He had Ohio State, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. I mean, again, it wasn't an easy draw, but it wasn't playing the elite back to back teams. And like when a team like the Big Ten, Illinois, has to play 3 or 4 or 5 straight days, depending on what it is, the Big Ten tournament champion is only 2-9 in the first rounds.
Hmm.
Teams do get beat up. So when I went to the database, and this is in the guide, Joe, the teams that have 6 or less days rest, meaning you've played the previous weekend, versus an opponents that have 10 or more days rest, those that played the conference tournaments in week 1 of that situation, those teams are only 34.9% against the spread. So the rust, or maybe the not beating each other up right before the tournament games, has been beneficial. Just FYI, it applies to UConn, Houston, Illinois, Washington State, and Wisconsin. I still like a couple of those teams. So even if I have a trend or a situation, it's only going to guide me one way or the other. It's never going to take me off a game that I truly like or put me on a game I don't like. I have to like the game. I have to like the situation. If the trend is in my favor, I do make it stronger. But I do go through all those that I listed, and I do put a little check or a minus mark in the schedule next to all of those. So it's not out of sight, out of mind. When you're making your final decision, every note that you put on that game, make sure you're weighing those notes as you make your final decisions.
So, Trig, I got a couple of interesting 8-9 matchups here that they feel kind of impossible here. I'll give them to you. You tell me which one is just unbettable in your opinion. Florida Atlantic taking on Northwestern, or Utah State and TCU. Which one of those games is, to you, maybe a little easier to look at and handicap as opposed to the other?
I like Northwestern. I'm not sure if this is going to make my client card, but certainly if the FAU money continues to come, like there's probably a point where I just jump in and buy in with Northwestern. I see threes out there right now. I think if this like hit 3.5, I'd have no choice. I haven't been as high on Florida Atlantic this year. I thought that, like, at first I thought that they were just in a tougher conference, but defensively I feel like they've taken a step back, and I just wonder how overhyped they are from their run last year. But really what it comes down to for me is Northwestern just they have the game changer on the floor in Boo Boo. And you're gonna, if you talk about that game, and if you're gonna give me like multiple key numbers on a neutral floor and what I consider to be like the sort of game changing player there with not much else separating them, I think I'd have to lean toward Northwestern. I think that's probably, of those two games, that's definitely the stronger of the two opinions I have there. The other 8-9 that I kind of think, I know people don't really, have much interest in this team at this point. I still think Michigan State is the superior team in that matchup with Mississippi State. So I don't know if either will make my card, but that's kind of the way I lean in those two 8-9 games. I'll throw the other one to Ralph. I don't have a huge opinion in TCU, Utah State. I'll see if he has anything there.
Or Nebraska, Texas A&M, Ralph. Which one's a little easier to handicap in your opinion?
Well, since A&M, I've been wrong on like 6 straight times. Whatever opinion I give, run the other way. I really, that's the game I don't have an opinion on. And it's funny that people ask all the time, "Oh, you've been handicapping for 40 years. You still get spooked on a team that you can't read, right?" Hell yeah, it happens to me. And A&M's one of those teams that, to be honest with you, Joe, I take a quick look at it, unless really something jumps out to me, I do just cross off the team. Now, I don't think this will make my card, but Utah State is a team that I've watched a lot, having lived in Vegas and, watching them play and seeing what they did. You look, and they've had no bad losses. And I love that, looking at an Aggie squad that's 27-6 this year under Sprinkle. Their losses: Bradley in overtime, New Mexico, San Diego State, Nevada, Colorado State, and San Diego State. Anytime I get that type of team, it's a situation that I do like. And TCU, TCU played a very weak non-conference schedule. So when they got off to a 11-2 start, let's see, there's 362 teams, Joe. TCU played the number 357 schedule. And again, TCU's a team that last year under Jamie Dixon, they started to play fast. They played fast against this year, but they turn the ball over a lot. They're number 238 in offensive turnovers. I do like Utah State of those games that we mentioned. Chan said it does make my card.
All right, so Trig, of course, it's got to be asked here, as I can see some people already rumbling. Your boy, St. Peter's, taking on Tennessee. Now, far be it from, just a pencil Tennessee.
By 50.
All right, that's what I was going to say, because there's a couple of months. Houston and Longwood and Tennessee and St. Peter's are off the charts as far as spread goes. They both cover. You trust them both to cover? Really is really what it comes down to.
I would probably give Wagner a better shot at UNC than I would St. Peter's at Tennessee. Like, I don't know what you do with that. Like, they're both 20-point dogs, but like, as good defensively as St. Peter's was in the MAC this year, you have to understand how awful the MAC conference is right now.
Yeah.
It's historically bad.
Yeah.
They have an offense outside of the top 300, and really, like, you go to those MAC games. Corey Washington carried that team offensively against MAC competition. Do you think Tennessee's going to have a hard time shutting Corey Washington down? I doubt it. He's one player. They handle players far better than that all season long, and so. I mean, where's the offense going to come from for St. Peter's if Tennessee figures out how to shut him down? The answer is it's just probably not going to come from anywhere. So you're probably going to get a game where St. Peter's struggles to break 50, and you're talking about a 20-point spread. It's going to be something like 68 to 42, something that's stupid like that. Probably an unwatchable game. At least Wagner showed like. Yeah, I had Wagner last night. I doubt I'll come back with them and take him against UNC. But like, their style of play is like a little bit more conducive to maybe hanging around in the game. The problem with them is they pretty much play like 6 or 7 guys. I don't think they have anyone else even available. It's worked for them because the NEC tournament is spread out. So it's like campus site game, 3 days off, campus site game, 3 days off. They might, they really started to run out. I was terrified last night, Joe. If we went to OT, if Howard sent that to OT with one of their 17 clean looks from 3 in the final 2 seconds, I would have been done. There's no way Wagner was going to cover 3 in overtime. So that's the concern with that. I don't listen, we're not going to have the crazy 16 seed beating a 1 every year, the 15 beating a 2. Maybe it just doesn't happen this year.
Good point.
It's like maybe it just doesn't happen this year. The 14 seeds are as weak as they've ever been. So maybe it just I don't know. I don't see like the spot where that I'd want to take. Like, honestly, I'll throw one out there. If I was going to take a stab with one of them, it'd be Longwood over Houston.
Longwood.
That would be the one. Yeah, just
if they hit threes.
Houston puts themselves in low enough scoring games sometimes where I could see that game being close if Houston doesn't have their tip-top offensive form.
Ralphie's got a point here because there are, you mentioned it with A&M, you just couldn't get on a hand, but there are some untrustworthy teams here that are laying some numbers here early on where you got to go, ugh, oh no. Arizona comes to mind here as a team where you just, how many more times we got to watch teams play down to the level of competitions? There's Texas A&M was one of them. Is there another team you just can't possibly trust enough? Yeah, they might win, but you don't trust them enough to back them here in the first couple of days.
Yeah, first, let me jump in and say we were talking about those huge dogs. Looking at the database since 2012, there have been 44 underdogs of plus 20 points or higher. They have actually gone 24 and 20, 54.5%. So while the ugly
Wow.
dogs do look ugly, you have to remember that there are times, and they're a little better. They're a little better on the first day of the weekend, because what happens is these teams know they have a matchup in 2 days. So perhaps you
Yeah.
don't keep that pressure on the entire time. So obviously, there was the 2 upsets, just to remind people: Purdue against FDU last year, and then UMBC
Yep.
against Virginia are the only 2 double-digit dogs that have won. When my microphone wasn't working earlier, and you guys were talking about filling out your brackets, I was going to
Yes.
make the joke, Joe, that I have absolutely ripped Purdue. By the way, Purdue is now 1-13 ATS in
Oh,
March Madness, their last 14
there it
games.
is.
They've covered 1
Yep.
game, and that was how pitiful they were in the Big Ten tournament. Excuse me. They were 1-13 in the Big Ten tournament. So as a postseason coach, it's not someone I want to back. I haven't done all the Friday games yet, and I'm still working on those. And I do like doing one day at a time, and I don't like getting carried away with trying to worry about conferences, point spreads, or seedings. I throw away the seeds. And one thing, people, when they're filling out brackets, people think, oh, it's such a big variance between a 5 and a 12. And we always hear about the 12 seeds upsetting a 5 seed. Well, a 5 seed could mean you're like 20 to 24. A 12 seed is only 48. If you take the 24th team in the country and the 48th team in the country, it's not nearly as big as a gap as you would think about, as it is that people make it on the seeding level. So that's my advice on that. I tell you what, Oregon is a team that I think can make a run. Anytime I have Altman, I think he could be the case. Iowa State's defense scares the bejeebers out of me and everyone else. I think they handle against South Dakota State. As far as double-digit favorites that I happily am going to look to fade, Illinois, I talked about that briefly. I am happy to fade them. And I am also happy to fade Alabama against Charleston. They're not quite a double-digit. They're 9.5. And again, I think Auburn's getting a little too much love as well. So those I have in my mind as big favorites that I will either pass or play against.
All right, Trig, one more where I know you saw both of these teams. It's not a 20-point favorite. It's more of a pick 'em, and it's Dayton and Nevada. It feels like it's a game. It really is a coin flip game, is it not? Or do you look at those 2 teams, having seen them, and think maybe one team is got an edge over the other?
Yeah, I got my Dayton hoodie on just because that's what I was wearing today. It is no indication of who I like in this game. I wanted to make a case, I thought coming off of that A10 performance that was lackluster. Of course, they're one and done. They go out and lose to Duquesne. I did want to make a case for Dayton in their first round games. This is before I saw the bracket. It's just because I knew that Duquesne matchup wasn't great for them. That was a scenario where they won both games in the regular season, and I felt like Duquesne's perimeter defense could give them trouble. I'm worried that Nevada maybe can do the same thing. One thing Nevada has is some real size at the guard position. And so I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, as badly as I want to take Dayton and play against the Mountain West team here in Nevada, I'm going to probably dig into this one a little bit more, or see what the market does. I'd love for them to push this to 2 and at least give me the chance to maybe take Dayton plus a possession. But that's kind of how you beat Dayton is get out and defend their 3-point shooters, because Holmes there in the middle is an absolute stud. But 3-point shooting has kind of been their backbone, right? Like, they've been top 5 nationally all year in shooting the 3. So what they like to do is, play through the paint to create an open 3. And if you can find a team that can defend the perimeter against them, Duquesne, which I already talked about their perimeter defense being really good.
Yep.
VCU was a team that gave Dayton some trouble during the regular season. Those are the kind of teams that can trouble the Flyers. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'll have to go and sort of, dig into this matchup a little further. Ultimately, I kept kind of flip-flopping,
Right.
the more I look at this one. So I don't know if it'll be a play for me, but I did like the idea of like jumping back in with Dayton because I felt like they were the best team all season long in the A10, and obviously just not a very good showing in the conference tournament. So maybe a little bit more juice this week from them, but I don't know that Nevada is the best matchup for them. So we'll see.
All right, Ralph, one other one I got for you because I have no idea why this line is not moved for all the love that Creighton has got. Why is this line not moving? Could Akron stay within this number and maybe, just maybe, keep it close enough to scare Creighton here? Because I don't think it's in Omaha the game. So what's going on with Akron this year here?
Well, you look at Creighton and, you have one of the most efficient offenses in the entire country. You have one of the most efficient defenses in the country, but they really play packed down. They put no pressure. In fact, it's amazing to see a defense. Ken Palm has them rated number 24, and they're number 362 in defensive turnovers. It's very rare that you have an elite defensive team that not only does not turn their opponents over, they're at the very bottom of the entire list in the country. So, Akron is a team that can turn the ball over, but if you're not going to turn Akron over, that gives them the ability to shoot a lot of shots. Now, they do like shooting a fair amount of threes, but they're not good at them. Akron can defend the three very well. They're actually number 13 in the country, but while Creighton does shoot a lot of threes, they're more efficient from twos. My power rating number had Creighton at 13.5. I actually think them losing last Thursday to Providence in round number 1 helps them. I think the extra day gets their feet ready, gets the team ready. You have great leadership with Alexander and Ashworth. You have you have Kalkbrenner in the middle. So you have that 7'1". You look at the Zips, the Zips have Freeman at 6'7" and Hunter 6'8", 6'9". So to me, I like Creighton. Akron did what they had to do, but you take a look. Beat Miami by 12, beat Ohio by 3, beat Kent State by 1. They were not impressive winning those games. They just survived. I actually lean Creighton in this one.
Yeah, you did a report on Akron before the season, Trig. I guess it's not a shock. I think you had them at least making the tournament here, but it just feels like this number is extremely low and not moving for a team that against the Creighton team, a lot of people think has pretty good shot here of maybe even pulling off the upset and winning their region.
Yeah, I would fade that. I'm not that high on Creighton making like a huge run in this tournament. I just they're so shot making reliant, Joe. That's so concerning in a tournament like this because they've had. If you look at their body of work this year, like every few, maybe not every few games, but there's ones that come to mind. The Colorado State game, I think one of the games against Villanova, where they just have a bad shooting performance and they can't, that would be my concern for them in this game because Akron's got a guy named Enrique Freeman who can go and take on Kalkbrenner. So Creighton's going to have to come in here and shoot the ball. If they don't, they could be going home, in my opinion, because they're and that's what but at the same time, they're such good shot makers that it's going to give them a chance in any game. So they're just a very volatile team, in my opinion. But I wouldn't just rule Akron out here. And the reason being, Freeman is such a good player. He's an NBA caliber player. And so very few teams have a guy that can really give Ryan Kalkbrenner difficulty. on both ends of the floor. Akron's got that guy in Enrique Freeman. That is going to be, if Akron's to hang around here, it's going to be because Freeman wins that matchup. And then of course the Zips, they do get out and guard the 3-point arc enough where they could make it tough for Creighton to score. But again, even in like future rounds, it's really going to come, for me, it'll always come down to what can a team do to Ryan Kalkbrenner, right? Like if a team has a good matchup on him, then I'll probably side with that team. If not, then you have to worry about like, do they have enough to stop Creighton? Because they have, they just, if Kalkbrenner's drawing so much attention where they've got to pull other guys to guard him, I mean, Creighton will kill you if you're just going to leave him open, because they, again, are an elite shot making team. So that's it's an interesting team to approach. And that's kind of how I'm seeing them.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, because that line is just not moving, and a lot of love for Creighton here and in a lot of brackets. But this is, something tells me this might not be as easy a cakewalk as a lot of people might think it is, and the market is telling you that. And a shout out to Akron there, Ralph, and a shout out to Trig and his $2 5% best bet, which has been $2, I believe, all week. Trig, still available up at your page. This is a Thursday or a Friday game?
The $2 plays Thursday. Yeah, it's still up for $2. It's 5% play. I'm 13-3 on 5% plays in college basketball, I think dating back to January 1st or the last 16 of them. So the 5%ers have been good. I'll throw one out that I did play that I've already given out for free on a couple of shows. I laid it with Baylor. I think it's a horrific matchup for Colgate. They just aren't as good as they've been in past years. And something that they really kind of did during Patriot League play, Joe, was just rely on like clogging up the paint. And they sort of just let teams take have the three against them, knowing that they don't have the quickness of guys like Tucker Richardson, Oliver Lynch-Daniels, who have been those perimeter defenders for Colgate the past couple of years. They don't really have that this year. And so they've kind of been okay with just letting teams bomb away from three. And in the Patriot League, that works because none of those teams can shoot. It was a really bad year for the Patriot League. A lot of teams really down. Baylor is going to absolutely eviscerate them from three. And if Colgate wants to get out and step out on the three, well, they've got slow bigs. Like Keegan Records is a pretty good player, but Woodward's really slow. And if you take Woodward off the floor, you've got to go a little bit smaller. I just think Baylor's got an answer for anything they can do. It feels like that's going to be like the first round blowout, in my opinion. I'm not giving Colgate any chance to win there. I don't see a world where they win that game. I'll be kind of surprised. Like, let's just put it into perspective. A better Colgate team lost to Texas last year by 20 as a 15 seed. This Colgate team's much worse than last year's Colgate team, but they're a 14 because a lot of the 1 seeds lost in their conference tournament. And now they're going to play Baylor and they're only catching like 13. I've got that as a 20 plus point Baylor win. That is a 4% play for me. One of the things I've already played for this weekend.
Nobody's had their finger on Colgate quite like Trig has all year long here, guys. So, but that $2 5% best bet is available now at his page at WagerTalk. So head on over there and grab that one. Also, while you're there, Ralph, you have a 5% best bet locked and loaded too. Is that a Thursday or a Friday game ready to roll?
That is a Thursday as well, Joe. So again, $35 for that play, or with the code MMRalph, you get 30 days, all sports for $179. That's code MMRalph.
Love it. Ralph over at his page. And there you got it, guys. T-minus 24 hours and counting as we get ready for the madness. March Madness. That's correct. Make sure you guys are visiting Trig there with that $2 5% best bet. Go grab it now. Use that code for Ralph on his page, and no reason not to partner up for the entire March Madness trip here with these guys. And don't forget, of course, Major League Baseball, I believe, officially started today here, and that will be here before you know it. And Ralph and Trig, nobody does Major League Baseball quite like these guys. So it's a great opportunity to hop on board with them over at WagerTalk.com. And then, of course, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and make plans to join us again tomorrow as we have plenty to go over here. Taking a final look at some of those opening tips tomorrow. We'll have you covered all day long here on Wager Talk TV. Certainly hope you'll come back and join us here as March Madness. Get ready. It is about to begin. On behalf of Ralph and Trig, we appreciate the time. Best of luck with all those plays here tonight. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Good luck.